Howdy, howdy, all. Welcome to Goose Talks Film. We are discussing 2025's Wolfman from director Lee Wanell, produced by Jason Blum and Ryan Gosling. I am your host, Goose. This is Goose Talks Film, and that's very good English. We do weekly movie reviews, new releases, and I share my thoughts, and I always encourage my viewers/listeners to do the same in the comments or a review or a DM, whichever way you want to do it. I always just love discussing movies and discussing other people's opinions. I think it's great. Um, we have a good community here, so always, make sure that you're being kind and courteous to everyone because it's a really cool, safe community here. So be cool, everyone, which I'm sure you will be. And as you know, a lot of my episodes are unedited. I just think it just shows me I do flub and stuff up quite a bit. I think it's just a bit more personal, especially with the podcast videos slash audio. When I'm doing YouTube videos where they're like edited anyway, it's obviously a bit different. But anyway, if you're new here, welcome on in. If you're a returning listener, thank you very much. I love your support as always. Anyway, we are talking about Wolfman. I wanted to drop this episode end of last week, but just life's getting in the way at the moment. So looks like the schedule at the moment is actually the start of the week on a Monday or Tuesday. The last few episodes, Nosferatu, Conclave, and now Wolfman, have all either been released on a Monday or a Tuesday, and it's usually meant to be a Friday. But hopefully this will be kind of an extra episode or a catch-up episode, as I'm hoping to drop another episode at the end of the week and maybe another bonus episode on Sunday or the following Monday. And that could be a few things. That could be Heart Eyes, Presence, Companion, or Dark Match. So it'll be one or two of those four. So make sure you're subscribed or you're following so you don't miss out on any of the updates of those upcoming movies. Anyway, we are here to discuss Wolfman. It is a reboot, remake, whichever way you want to call it, of the classic Universal monster Wolfman movies. There's been quite a few iterations throughout the years, if it be the original Universal classic movies or Wolfman featuring in animated movies or, TV specials. And werewolves in general, or lichens, they are a very popular staple of the horror genre. Also a bit of fantasy, but usually, if you ask anyone, it stays within the horror realms usually. This one's, I'll probably ramble on a bit more in the spoiler territory. While we're in the spoiler-free zone, here I always do a little bit of a review that's spoiler-free without giving away too much. So if you haven't watched the film, and you're still undecided, listen to my review and, make up your own mind. And if you do want to watch the movie, then listen to my spoiler-free part and then pause it. I'll give you heads up when I'm getting into the spoiler territory. So pause it, go watch the movie, come back, listen to it, and see if you agree with my opinions or not. I'm very intrigued to see what everyone thinks, especially of this movie. I'm not going to be probably super positive on this, and I don't know if it's because my expectations were at a certain level. But I'll dive into my opinions. I'll just read the very brief plot outline like I do here always. It's usually one or two sentences. A family at a remote farmhouse is attacked by an unseen animal. But as the night stretches on, the father begins to transform into something unrecognizable. So, if you're familiar with Wolfman, usually it's, if you're going back to Universal movies and a few other remakes as well, it's usually about quite a well-off, rich son or a husband, depending on, what they portray in the movie. And it's pretty much hunted by the town, and they don't really know that it's him until the very end. It's in the vein of a lot of other Universal movies. It is very similar to Frankenstein in some aspects, not a lot. But, as a broad werewolf thing, when it's Wolfman in the title, when it's the Wolfman character, it is usually, and made by Universal nonetheless, it is usually set back in time. It's usually a period piece set on a remote estate as opposed to like a farm. It's usually like a rich estate. And that's kind of the conflict that comes into it. And if you've seen the 2010 film with Benicio del Toro, that's pretty much the gist of what a lot of the Wolfman movies generally are. If that's what you are looking for from Lee Wanell's 2025 Wolfman, you'll be bitterly, bitterly disappointed. It is, yeah, not a period piece. This is not so much a spoiler, but there's two time frames. I think it's 1995 or 1996, maybe a bit later, but it's the late 90s, and then it's thrust into present time, roughly 30 years later. So I think it's 95, and then it jumps forward, sorry, to 2025. So it has a bit of story setting in the opening, which is 95. Then majority of the film takes place, about at least 95%, if not more, of the film takes place in modern day 2025. This movie is beautifully shot. Whoever did the set, sorry, whoever did the location scouting and also the set design and all that as well. I think a lot of this was shot on location, if I'm not mistaken, in Oregon. Beautiful. It's the farm and everything like that. It's shot awesome. Sets a great tone. I'll delve deeper into this opinion once you get to the spoiler territory. But what I will say is this probably would have made a better Bigfoot movie. And that'll make a lot more sense once you've seen the movie, or if you don't care about spoilers, you'll hear me talk about the movie in depth when I read out the plot line with the spoilers. That's as much as I'll go into in the spoiler-free territory. But yeah, look, if you're wanting your typical Wolfman, like the original Universal movie from the 40s, or even the Benicio del Toro remake from 2020, directed by Joe Johnston, they are worlds apart from this movie. This doesn't even, it doesn't feel like a Wolfman in that vein at all. It's not just because of the modern day setting either. But yeah, I'll leave that where it is without getting the spoilers. I don't want to slip up and say anything. But if you're looking for maybe a fun cinema experience, I think it's pretty much wrapped up its theatrical release or theatrical run now. But you might be able to catch a few sessions if you want a good, hour and 40, hour and 45 horror movie to sit through that's going to be fun to watch. It's not a slog by any stretch. I wouldn't say that I was so much bored in this movie. I wouldn't say I was enthralled or excited the entire time, but I didn't look at my watch on my phone or, check on my TV because I watched this on digital. I didn't do that once at all, like trying to see how long was left in the movie or anything like that. So it's always a good sign. It's not a slog. It's, it doesn't feel like a marathon or anything like that. So it's always a good plus, especially in today's day and age when it comes to film. So, yeah, that's what I'll say about that. I wasn't bored. Were my expectations not met? Yeah, I would say my expectations were definitely not met, and they weren't super, super high. I did catch a few little ratings and reviews, not in-depth ones, but I did catch a few before I watched it. So that might have lowered my expectations a little bit, even though I don't take, other people's opinions or views that seriously. It's kind of just a broad general thing. But I did hear that it was kind of bombing at the box office and had quite a low IMDb rating. And, Lee Whannell, he's a very, very accomplished filmmaker. One of the co-creators of Saw. He also did the remake of Invisible Man, which is also a Universal movie. So I think that's when my expectations were so high because, this guy, he's written so many films. I mean, I've got his list up here. So these are his writing credits. Saw 2, Saw 3, Dead Silence, Insidious, Insidious Chapter 2, Cooties, The Mule, Insidious Chapter 3, Insidious The Last Key, Upgrade, The Invisible Man, Insidious Red Door, and Wolfman. And he's only directed 4 of those. He's directed Insidious 3, Upgrade, The Invisible Man, and Wolfman. And of the first 3 he directed, I mean, The Last Key was... not Last Key. Chapter 3, Insidious, was a good film, a very good installment of that franchise. Upgrade, I thought, was probably the most underrated movie of 2018. That was really cool. That was different. It was kind of, like an action horror. I thought it was really, really cool. Invisible Man, I mean, that speaks for itself. That was during COVID time. That was by far one of the best movie experiences I had sitting on my couch, like a lot of people were in 2020. Such a good film. So I think my expectations were super, super high, just from Lee's background as a writer and also as a director. I mean, this is his 4th film, and definitely, in my opinion, in terms of not so much the direction, but in terms of overall film, it's probably I don't want to say worst, because that makes it sound like it's a terrible film, but it's definitely the least best of the 4, I'll say. Maybe on par with Insidious Chapter 3. But, and that's all I'll delve into without getting into the nitty gritty of that. But he wrote, he directed, and he was also the executive producer of Wolfman and the Invisible Man. So he had a lot of control on both those movies. So I think that's why my expectations were very, very high for this film, because we are seeing a lot more now, but we need to see more of it, where movie studios and production companies and stuff need to trust their filmmakers more and not interfere so much. Some of the worst movies of the past 10, 20 years were fiercely interfered with by executives and all that from those companies. If you're willing to take a filmmaker on and they want to tell their story or tell the film story in their way, then let them do it. If that means that the movie's 2.5, 3 hours long, that's the risk and that's the bet that you're taking when you get this filmmaker on board. Don't get a filmmaker on board and then new to them. Don't get them. Get someone else. Get it. What they used to call a good old fashioned studio director. They were literally, they're not present as much these days. But back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and maybe a bit of the 80s, typically in horror and westerns, you had these directors who were given a script. They were given strict guidelines saying, this is your budget. You only have 18, 20 days to film, and that's it. And the directors were like, okay, they do their job, and their job would be to pretty much meet a schedule and to film no more than 2 or 3 takes at a time. If there was a take of no line forgetting, or if the scene was done good enough, they'd be done. Yep, that scene's done. Next one. It wasn't like we see these directors that would do 200 takes to get the perfect take. Not with those, what they would call, studio directors, or there's also another phrase that I can't remember. So Lee Whannell, from what I can gather and from what I've heard and what I've done research on, was he was given quite a big leeway and given the reins for this movie. So again, I think that's why my expectations were very, very high in this film. I'll probably leave the spoiler-free territory here. What I'll end on is, look, would I recommend this movie? If you need to watch every horror movie every year, if you're looking for more and more new horror to watch, this definitely isn't going to leave you angry or disappointed or making you hate film or horror films or anything like that. Look, if you're a horror nut, watch it. It's hour and 40, hour and 45, and like I said, it's not a slog. It's not boring. You're not going to look at your phone or your watch. Well, I don't think you will anyway. There's enough action and all that, but that's kind of where it ends. But that's the spoiler-free territory done. So this is a spoiler warning. And we'll, like we always do here on Goose Talks Film, I'll dive into the very, very deep plot synopsis of the film from start to finish. This one's not very, very big compared to other ones, obviously, because, like I said, only about an hour and 40 of film. So please bear with me while I read through the full plot synopsis. In 1995, a hiker's vanishing in the remote mountains of Oregon sparks speculation about a virus linked to the region's wildlife. During a hunting trip in the area, a young Blake Lovell and his stern father Grady spot a mysterious humanoid creature lurking in the forest and hide in an elevated hunting blind. 30 years later, Blake lives in San Francisco with his daughter Ginger and workaholic wife Charlotte. Like his now estranged father, he struggles to control his temper, causing a strain on his marriage. One day, he receives a death certificate for Grady, who went missing, and the keys to his childhood home. He decides to vacation there in an attempt to repair his relationship with Charlotte. Seeking directions, they encounter a local Derek, who leads them to the house as the sun sets. Before they arrive, a creature drives them off the road, scratches Blake's arm, and drags Derek away. Blake frantically leads his family to the house, turning on the generator and barricading the entrance to protect them from the monster outside. With his arm bloody and infected, Blake starts to show signs of illness, losing teeth, sweating profusely, and experiencing nose sensitivity. Hearing the creature, he puts his ear to the side door, only for the monster to grab his foot through the pet door and injure him further before Charlotte stops it by hitting it with a hammer. Charlotte grows increasingly worried as Blake loses some motor functions and his ability to speak and understand her. His hair starts to fall out, as do more teeth and fingernails. With fangs and claws growing out and his vision becomes distorted, fur grows on his body, and to fight the pain in his arm, Blake gnaws on it like an animal, frightening her. She spots a rundown truck outside and manages to jumpstart it. Before the family can drive away, the creature smashes a windshield, forcing them to seek shelter atop a greenhouse. Blake signals Charlotte to take Ginger back to the house and runs it to the opposite direction to make the monster follow him. Moments later, a limping and more deformed Blake returns. He vomits a severed finger and menacingly approaches Charlotte, scaring her and Ginger. Realizing the danger he puts them in, he prepares to leave, but the creature finds its way in and attacks them. Blake puts himself between the monster and his family, and in the struggle, he bites the creature's neck and kills it. Recognizing a tattoo on its arm, Blake realizes the monster is his infected father. He runs outside, the final stages of his werewolf transformation taking hold. Unable to control himself, he attacks his family who flee to a nearby barn. Blake claws his way in, using his newfound night vision to sneak towards them in the dark, but is caught by a bear trap that Charlotte laid down. He chews off his insnared foot and continues pursuing as Charlotte and Ginger flee to the surrounding forest and hide in a hunting blind as the sun rises. Blake climbs up and Charlotte points a rifle at him. Realizing Blake is in pain and wants to die, the family shares a final look as Blake lunges and Charlotte fatally shoots him. They comfort a dying Blake before walking out of the forest, taking in the beauty of a valley he once described seeing as a child. Anyway, sorry, my throat was dying there. Yeah, so, like I said, this should have just been not titled Wolfman. Obviously, like I said, the title with Wolfman being distributed by Universal Pictures is always going to have expectations, and we always talk about, oh yeah, like modernizing Sherlock Holmes, or modernizing this, modernizing Dracula. Some work, some don't. And I think if you're doing Wolfman, the story takes place in a certain time period, like I said, a certain setting. But you can change your characters as much as you want in terms of maybe the main character is a bit more dislikable, or a bit more aggressive, or a bit more cowardice, or something. That's what you change. And like I said, this movie was beautifully shot. I think the night scenes were easy to see without being too dark, but then also was dark enough and lit in a way that it still made you feel very secluded in a very dark and scary forest/farm setting. So that was done well. The overall direction by Lee, I think, in terms of the direction, was okay. I'll throw a bit of shade at Lee though, because he did write the film. He co-wrote it with Corbett Tuck, I think. So the blame goes to both of those, and the direction is not perfect, but I'd say the writing and just the overall story and the plotline and maybe some of the character development just wasn't great. I stated earlier, the box office of a $25 million budget, the box office was $33.2 million. So with marketing costs on top, which the movie was marketed quite well. I did see it around a bit. So I don't think they would have made much money, if any. So whatever money they make from streaming, digital and all that, it's not going to be heaps. So it's probably going to be, maybe not a box office bomb, but it's definitely going to be a box office failure, unfortunately. I think word of mouth and all that, I think its opening weekend it did okay, and then kind of plummeted after that. And that's why I went to digital so quick. Yeah, look, I'll get into proper comparisons later, but I still think Joe Johnston's 2010 Wolfman definitely is just a more fun movie. I think the problem is with Invisible Man, it worked with the way that Lee wants to do these type of movies, right? He wants to make them probably a bit more grounded as they can be with obviously the stories that you're trying to tell. Character like Invisible Man's always been a bit goofy and whatnot, but Lee was able to then twist that and make it serious and cool. Wolfman's always been, albeit a bit corny and a bit goofy at times. Wolfman and werewolves in general really are more often than not very, taken very seriously, as opposed to some other characters, or, you do see werewolves in some comedy movies and stuff, but at the end of the day, it's more often or not, the tone is serious and they take themselves very seriously in terms of filmmakers that do werewolf movies, lichens, whatever you want to refer to them as. We have Robert Eggers. He's going to be doing, I think, a 13th or 12th century werewolf movie that's due for release Christmas next year. And nothing against Lee or anything like that, but I immediately looked past this film and looked towards that. I thought, okay, that's probably going to be a bit more my cup of tea, but then, that's not really fair because this could have been my cup of tea, but just a lot of issues with this movie. One, setting it in current day, it could have worked, but it wasn't necessary. Maybe to save the budget. But what they could have changed was maybe he's not a rich guy or anything like that. Maybe it was a family from the same time period that Wolfman is set in. I'm trying to think of when the movie, late 1800s. I was going to say early 1900s, but late 1800s is when the Wolfman is set. So you could have done a family, poverty-stricken family on a farm in the late 1800s or early 1900s or something like that. It doesn't have to be a rich family or anything like that. But I think doing the story that they're telling about a boy that was brought up by maybe like a tin hatter or a doomsday guy, I don't know. They didn't really reveal much about his dad, but they didn't have proper electricity, obviously because of where they lived. They lived in the middle of nowhere, and he had like flags and all that in his basement. His basement was kind of like, it did look a bit like a doomsday shelter, and he obviously had his like meat fridge and slash freezer in there as well. So it wasn't really revealed too much about his dad. His dad kind of seemed a bit sinister to begin with, but they never touched on it and revealed that. That was kind of an end that wasn't concluded or answered, or whichever way you want to put it. I didn't mind because that's a Wolfman type thing of the son comes home to the family home after being away for so long, and that kind of the way they tied that in was the boy left when he got old enough because he didn't like the way that his dad was living life, and maybe he was scared of what was lurking in the forest and whatnot. So that was cool the way they did that. The cast is good. I thought Christopher Abbott, Julia Garner, they had some pretty decent chemistry with the story they were telling, that they were obviously struggling with their marriage for different reasons. Obviously, she's very work-based and she doesn't really have the relationship with her daughter that he does. He's a stay-at-home dad, but, he kind of alludes that he wants to work and he's between jobs. And, Ryan Gosling produced it with Jason Blum too. It's kind of something I forgot to mention earlier. Another thing I didn't like about the movie was we get introduced to Derek, who is a character that was mentioned in the plot synopsis, that is kind of creepily just standing in one of those hunting nooks when they pull up, when they're lost, when they're trying to find their dad's farm because he can't quite remember where they're going. And he pulls up at a place thinking that it's his farm. And Derek introduced himself, who we overheard both their dads talking. His dad was obviously the one talking to the main character's dad over the walkie-talkie. Sorry, my nose is very itchy if you're watching the video. I'm sorry, my nose just won't stop itching. And he's like, no. And he comes off as very like creepy and eerie, and maybe it's just a red herring thing, but it's very annoying that he was just a lamb to slaughter. He was just a character that could be killed because of the secluded nature of the film. They obviously wanted to have at least one or two death scenes, and this guy was literally just brought in to be killed. We meet him. He's a bit odd. He's a bit weird. He's got his gun, and he's leading them to their place at night. And he says to them, "Look, around here we don't leave our houses, or we're not out in the woods at night. Blah 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 blah." And his house is right there. You would have thought that if he knew they weren't going to get to the farm in time, which he said he knows exactly where it is because he knows obviously Grady, that he knew him when he was growing up before he went missing and turned into a wolf, that he would have said, "Look, we're not going to make it. Stay with me, and we'll go there in the morning." And that would have created a conflict of the family because they were already kind of a bit taken back by him because the dad kind of admitted that he didn't really remember him at all. He was just kind of acting as though he did because the dude clearly knew him and his dad. So that would have been cool. That could have only been a 5-10 minute scene where they go back to this guy's farm and maybe he does something accidentally that scares them, and then they just say, "Oh no, shit, we've got to leave." And they run out of his house at night, and he races after them, trying to save them, saying, "No, don't leave." But they're, still suspicious of him. And that's maybe when the Wolfman attacks him, and then they panic and jump in the car, and that's when the car crash can happen. But the way that it happens is he hops in the car and he's like, "I can take you there." And it's nighttime, and he's not looking worried or anything, even though he just said, "We don't leave our houses at night," and there's things going on. He knows what's happening. He knows what's happened to Grady and all that. But yet he's so nonchalant about being in the van at night. And then they crash and he gets killed and eaten by the wolf. I hate that cruisy shit, man. That's just cruising along, hitting all the dots you need to. Like this isn't a slasher movie. When you're doing certain movies, you have expectations and whatnot and what's to be met. And when you introduce a character like this that you think is going to be a really cool red herring, that he's creepy, that they introduce him and all that, I thought, oh, cool. There's going to be some cool conflict. Maybe something happens in the car that he just goes to readjust his gun, but the dad thinks he's going for it. Something like that. But he's literally brought in as a lamb to slaughter just so someone can be killed early on to create a bit of fear and all that in the audience. So very lazy, very, very lazy from Lee. I didn't like this at all. This kind of was when my opinion of the film started to plummet. I was still having high hopes it was going to go up for me, and I thought, that's just a tick in the wrong box of cruising laziness. Cliche shit. I don't like. We're in 2025 now. Last year was one of the best movies for horrors that we've had, maybe ever, but certainly in the last 20 years. And to start off the year, kind of like what we did last year with some very ordinary horror movies, and they know that, except for a few of the Scream movies that release in January and Feb, we don't get a lot of very good or high budget horror movies this time of year in the first 2 or 3 months. Last year we had Night Swim and Imaginary, which were garbage films, garbage horror movies, but garbage films in general. And Wolfman, I'm not saying is on their level, but it's not a good film by any stretch of the imagination. It is very disappointing. Like I said, my expectations were high, and not just because Wolfman, because of werewolves. I love just werewolves as a medium. I love reading fiction about them. I love reading supposedly non-fiction about them. I love werewolves. They're the thing that I cling on to. Some people are vampires. Some people are, like other mythical creatures like Bigfoot or Wendigo or anything like that. And what I was saying earlier about Bigfoot was this would have made a really good Bigfoot movie. Like, if you would have replaced the werewolves with Bigfoot and not have an infection type thing, maybe even a rabies thing. Maybe if you want to do body horror, do a rabies thing with Bigfoot or something. That would have been really, really cool, as Bigfoot is kind of the main villain, but then also the second villain's not rabies or just another disease that you could have done some really cool body horror scenes with. And instead of turning into a Bigfoot, they just die. And I think this would have made it look a really cool, because we haven't had a big budget proper Bigfoot movie that was taking itself seriously. We had Exists 11 years ago, which was a handycam movie, which is quite good for what it is. But this kind of made me want a Bigfoot movie more than another Wolfman adaptation or even another werewolf movie until Robert Eggers' movie comes out in nearly 2 years' time. This, just kind of, I don't know if it's a positive or a negative thing, but it really wanted me, it wanted me, I can't speak and get so passionate. It made me really want to have a Bigfoot movie, and I think Lee Winnell would have done a really good job of Bigfoot movie. In Oregon, secluded farm. Could have been done the same story with the family. Everything could have been the same, but just replace a few things with Bigfoot. I think would have made a big difference. It would have been a really cool film. And it probably would have been better, because the expectations probably would have been lower, but in saying that, like I said, because we haven't had a big budget Bigfoot movie, maybe that would have made the expectations higher. Don't know, never know, but that's not the universe we live in, unfortunately, or the timeline that we live in. And then just the design of the werewolves was just didn't work this time. Like, Lee changed certain things for the Invisible Man, set it in modern time, made it more like a technology suit as opposed to what you see in other mediums of it was a concoction, a science lab, or it's a disease or whatever it is. And that really worked. And the characters and the scenes, and there's multiple scenes from the Invisible Man that stand out. Like, I think everyone always brings up the knife at the restaurant scene. One of the best scenes in horror ever, maybe. Honestly, it's that good. I can't think of one good scene that stands out in this film. Like, it doesn't even have to be on that level, because that's kind of a bit unfair, because that is like top tier horror movie scene territory, right? But I can't even think of one good scene that sticks out, like, for good reasons. The only scenes I'm thinking of are for bad reasons. That's never good, a movie like this. You want highlights and whatnot. Like I was saying about the design, obviously you have a slow transformation, bit more like a disease, in leaning more into the body horror thing, where you turn into this mangy werewolf creature forever. Like, you don't just turn into a werewolf at full moon, at night time or anything like that, where it's once in a full moon thing, it's literally like that's your life. You slowly turn. It is kind of like rabies. It turns you into this creature, and that's you forever. I didn't mind that aspect as much. I think they maybe could have done a better job with that type of thing that they wanted to do, but the design just wasn't good enough. The slow transformation was cool. I thought that was done as good as it could have been done for what they were trying to do. I do love a good goofy schlocky transformation scene where it happens within a minute or two. Obviously, the American Werewolf in London is the best werewolf transformation there is and ever will be. Like, nothing will come close to that. Even Benicio del Toro's transformation as Wolfman obviously won the Best Makeup award at the Oscars, which is outstanding for a horror movie, but just a movie like that in general to win was really, really good. So I did kind of miss that from this because that's what Wolfman is like, really cool. Like, in today's technology, what you can do with CGI or makeup or a mixture of both, I think the one-off transformation, would have been really, really cool to see. But I do appreciate that when you're remaking something like this or rebooting it, whatever you want to call it, that you do have to change things. It can't just be a shot-for-shot remake because no one likes them. We've seen that with the 1998 Psycho with Vince Vaughn. It just doesn't work and it's just no point. So I know you have to change things. I would have preferred to keep the slow transformation permanently into werewolf over than the current day setting, the modern day setting, of 2025. I would have liked it. Maybe even if they left it in 95 would have been cool and something different. We don't get a lot of 90s based werewolf movies unless they were made in the 90s. So, yeah, that's kind of not great. The acting, like I said, was really, really good. I thought Julia Garner was good, but by her standards, when you compare it to her performance in Apartment 7A, just doesn't hold up and doesn't come close. But that she did really good with what she was given. I'm not holding that to her really at all. It was just the movie and the script and the character that was given to her. I mean, she really did do the best. And Christopher Abbott, I thought, was really good in his role. I thought he was very believable as the dad, the type of dad that he was playing in the movie. I thought was very believable. The chemistry that he had with his on-screen daughter was really good. Like I said, it was very believable that they were father and daughter. And it did feel like, him and his wife were an estranged couple having issues. That was all believable. Yeah, the acting and the casting I thought was really, really good. I did notice, though, and I did get confirmation afterwards once I did a bit of searching, was that the actor playing the dad didn't reprise the role as the werewolf version of himself. It was a different actor, and it was a bit jarring because I did notice that. With the eyes and even under makeup, you could tell it was a different actor, although some of the features were similar. It kind of threw me off because you could tell it was a different actor, and yeah. I thought, yeah, the design at the end of the day still was lacking and wasn't cool. The concept they came up with of the slow transformation, like I said, like a disease throughout the night, as opposed to quickly turning into a werewolf, then you're werewolf the whole night, then you wake up as a human, you're permanently a werewolf. That aspect I liked. That was a cool aspect I would like to maybe see tackled again in the future, but definitely in a better way by a different filmmaker. But yeah, the design was definitely lacking. I thought if you're going to do a Wolfman movie or even a werewolf movie in general, it's hard to do realistic, grounded versions, and it's just werewolves are cool, man. Like werewolves are badass. Like werewolves are meant to be scary and stuff, and it was kind of just creepy looking, not so much scary, and it was lacking in that department, unfortunately for me. And when you're doing a movie called Wolfman about a Wolfman, and your Wolfman character or characters are lacking, then you have a bit of an issue. And there was just some silly scenes, I thought as well. Just some silly logic things. Some of the chase scenes and all that. And I never like, and I know it's not Pokemon, so it's not power based or anything like that. But I never like in a movie where the dad as the werewolf has clearly been a werewolf for a long time. As long as he's been missing, which has been years and years and years now, right? The dad is still in his transformation. He's still quite sick and he's turning into the wolf, but yet he pretty much gets the better of the dad to begin with because he bites his fingers and escapes him, and then he beats him in a one-on-one fairly easily. Don't like that shit. And I know it's not a Pokemon thing or a Gladiator thing when it comes down to skill and all that type of stuff, but I never like that your big bad of the movie gets defeated pretty quick, and then it just becomes this thing of the, mother realizes that the dad's pretty well cooked. He's never going to be who he was. He's pretty well essentially dead. But the daughter still believes he can be turned back to good. So there's that little conflict there. And that's kind of where it ends. Now, there's really nothing else to that that I think is good enough that your big bad of the movie is barely on screen. And when he is, he's getting his ass kicked fairly easily by a not even fully transformed werewolf. And then when we get the dad fully into werewolf, like the design, like I said, is not great, but it's creepy, it's cool, it does fit the tone of the movie, so it's not, it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb or anything like that. And then the scene I knew it was always going to go back to that hunting outlook where the dad as a boy and his dad were there when they first got hunted by the wolf. I would have liked a bit more background on how long these werewolves have been for, and maybe who was that wolf that was hunting them when he was a boy, and who turned the dad, and did he go out looking for him and kill? There's some unanswered questions, and not every question has to be answered. But didn't like that aspect either. Although it was, like I said, it wasn't a slog and it wasn't boring or anything, but it also felt as though nothing really happened in an hour and 40, hour and 45. So it's pretty much the dad slowly turns into a werewolf, and then when he fully transforms into a werewolf, he gets killed by his family out of mercy. Is that good enough storytelling? Like, is that a good enough point to get to for an hour and 40 minutes? I don't think so. That's just not a good enough full stop. It's just, it's very lackluster ending. It leaves you wanting a shit ton more. Look, I don't want to shit on this movie too much. I have sung some of its praises. I thought the cinematography was good. Like I said, I thought the overall feel of the film and the eeriness and like I said, the set location was fucking phenomenal. I would love to see more horror movies filmed in Oregon and that look like this. And like I said, hopefully a Bigfoot movie or something similar like that would be really, really cool. It brought back memories of certain X-Files episodes that were set in Oregon and other American forests and stuff that look similar to Oregon as well. So that was really cool. That was gave me flashbacks of watching X-Files for the first time, which is my favorite show of all time. So that was really cool. That was a big positive. Like I said, the acting was good. The casting was good. It was just some of the characterization, and I really did not like them bringing in that Derek character just to be killed. Didn't like that. It was like a fake out red herring, which I just did not appreciate at all. Like I said, it was unfortunately a failure. Just like Tom Cruise's Mummy movie from 2017. Although I think that's probably a movie I would rewatch over this. Not so much saying it's a better film or anything like that, but it's definitely a movie I would rewatch and have more fun rewatching than I would rewatch this. Excuse me. That's pretty much all I'll say about this movie. I have said some of its positives. It does have a 5.8 on IMDb, obviously out of 10, which I think is pretty fair. That's probably where I would sit on a rating. I wouldn't disagree with that rating really that much. I wouldn't say it's too positive or too negative. I think it's about right. It's a shame that this movie didn't do well at the box office. I don't know if Lee was planning to do sequels or he maybe wanted to do a crossover with Wolfman and Invisible Man, or they were doing another Universal universe, but it hasn't worked every time they've done it. I think they just need to, and they might have done that for this. I'm not sure, but they just need to stick to doing standalone Universal movies if that's what they want to do, and stick to the source. Like if you're jumping back into doing Universal movies, I actually quite liked Dracula Untold, and then I was disappointed in the end credits when it jumped to them in current day, in modern time, because obviously they were doing the crossover. Well, they were planning on doing the crossover with the Mummy and all that, and Dracula and whatnot, Frankenstein, all that, and Benicio del Toro's Wolfman, and that whole that Universal universe, that monster. Oh my god, I can't even speak. The Universal Monster Universe didn't get off the ground, and if you're gonna be doing Wolfman, if you're gonna be doing Dracula, We are getting a couple of Frankenstein movies this year. Guillermo del Toro is filming a Frankenstein movie, which I have high hopes for. That's not set in modern times because he's very particular. He respects the source material, and you can when you're remaking something and you're trying to make it different and cool and do your own twist on it. It does not fucking mean that you have to do it in modern times. It doesn't have to be like that. If you have a look at Robert Eggers with Nosferatu, he didn't change the time period or anything like that, but you watch that movie and you think, yeah, this is a Robert Eggers movie. This is a Robert Eggers Nosferatu movie. And that's what I wanted from this. I wanted a Lee 1L Wolfman movie. And I got that, and that's not what I wanted, unfortunately. So I think if they want to do Dracula movies, they want to do Frankenstein, they want to do Wolfman, they need to stick to the source. And yes, Invisible Man worked being in modern times because that really did fit because of the modern technology of the suit instead of like a science type thing. It worked. This iteration of Wolfman just did not work, unfortunately. It had the potential there with what they were doing with the permanent wolf turn slowly over the full moon night. And they didn't even focus on the full moon or anything like that either. It's in the poster and shit, but they really don't touch on it at all. I loved one of the opening shots of the dad and the son where they're overlooking the valley and all that in Oregon. Beautiful, phenomenal. And then they do the final shot with the mother and daughter once the dad has been killed. They look back and kind of reenact the shot from the start of the film with the father and the father and the son that becomes their dad. You know what I mean? So that was really cool. That was a nice touch. That's pretty much where the positives end. But the negatives aren't super, super bad. This probably won't be nominated for biggest stinker, worst movie of 2025 at the second annual Golden Goose Awards. Will it be nominated for any of the other categories, like the positive categories? Probably not, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I'll leave my opinions and my overall review there. I'll do a bit of quick trivia while I'm there. Before I jump into trivia, actually, what I wanted to say was maybe Wolfman and Werewolves and all that don't make the money that we think, because I forgot until I was doing research just before that 2010's Wolfman, I always thought was a success, and that's why they were doing Dracula Untold and they were doing Tom Cruise's The Mummy and all that. But its budget was 150 million and its box office was 142.6 million. So excluding marketing, it lost money. And on top of the marketing, it would have lost a shit ton of money. So I'm really surprised by that. And look, I'm just comparing because it's easy to say. I'm not saying Joe Johnston's 2010 Wolfman with Benicio del Toro is a phenomenal movie or even a great werewolf movie, but it is what I expect a Wolfman/werewolf movie to be. Cool transformation scene, an awesome fight scene at the end. Although Anthony Hopkins probably had his worst performance in this movie. I don't know if he didn't want to do it or he had disagreements with Joe Johnston. I'm not sure, but he was just atrociously bad in that movie. And I thought Benicio del Toro was good. And I was disappointed we never got a sequel. There was going to be Hugo Weaving's Inspector Francis Abilene. He was going to be the focus, obviously, because he got bitten at the end of the first movie. He was going to be a werewolf in London. And obviously, Abilene is famous for being the inspector for the Jack the Ripper cases, although I think his name was Frederick Abilene. I could be wrong, although and in Wolfman it's Francis. But yeah, anyway, I'll stop talking about all the negatives. I'll jump into the trivia. Lee Whannell explained how he conceived the werewolf's point of view shot, saying, "I had this idea of the camera moving around the room and suddenly what seemed like gibberish became legible and you realised there was some invisible wall that the camera had crossed through. I started researching wolves, how they see, the colours of their eyes. I was thinking about how animals hear. When we talk to our dogs, we all anthropomorphise our pets. I have whole conversations with my dog where I'm like, what are you doing? Oh, you're upset? What are you upset about? You know that he's just staring at you. They recognise tone and maybe up to 20 words. I was thinking about that. The classic Wolfman story is a great way to use this because usually in Wolfman stories, the transformation is very quick. I was like, what if you slowed this down and treated it more like a degenerative illness? I was thinking more of a film like Still Alice. Yeah, look, like I said, that's the aspect I did appreciate. I don't think the execution was perfect, but I really did appreciate the different aspect that he took with that. We haven't seen that a lot, if at all, of the slow process and then it becomes permanent. And yeah, I didn't mind the scenes where it's kind of like, yeah, he's a dog where he can't understand his wife because he's losing all motor function and he's starting to hear like a dog. So it's all just gibberish to him. He can only pick up a few words here and there. The moving truck in the film is a fictional company called Pierce, which has been in business since 1941. The name references Jack Pierce, who was Universal's classic monster makeup artist in their 30s and 40s heyday. 1941 references the year Universal's original Wolfman film was released. Cool. I like little throwbacks like that. Little, showing your appreciation for the source. I like it. Lee Whannell and his wife Corbett Tuck co-wrote the film's first draft by pulling from the feeling of confinement and isolation caused by COVID-19 pandemic to touch on the inevitability of illness and death, setting the story primarily in one location to make the drama intimate and drawing from themes of parenting and marriage. Yeah, again, appreciate that aspect of it. I really did, and I didn't realize. I think I might have referred to Corbett Tuck as a man. I apologize. Last one. Vocal distortion to convey Blake's diminishing ability to understand the human language was done by layering the dialogue on top of it in reverse. Oh, cool. So it wasn't just them just doing gibberish or anything in a microphone or whatever. There's a process behind it. I like it. So I'll leave the trivia there for that one, and I'll pretty much land the plane here and end the review here. We've just gone over 45 minutes, which is where I like to aim for a review. And yeah, please let me know what you thought of Wolfman in the comments or in a review or a direct message. I like to hear everyone's opinions other than my own. And make sure you're hitting that subscribe and that like button over on YouTube if you're watching the video version. If you're listening to this on Apple Music, Amazon Music, Spotify, Audible, YouTube Music, whatever it is, on Podbean, make sure you hit the follow button so you don't miss out on any new release movies. Like I said, we're doing quite a few new releases in the next week. There'll be at least 3 new episodes within about 7-8 days. So make sure you're following, like I said. And we'll leave the review here. It is very, very hot in my man cave. It's about nearly 30 degrees. So my voice is going a bit weird and I'm starting to go a bit delirious. And that's probably why I'm stuttering and shit whatnot. So thank you so much if you made it this far into the podcast. As always, if you're a regular listener or a new one, I appreciate the love so much, guys. A lot of work goes into doing this, making sure I watch the movies, I go to the movies or I buy or rent them digital, which isn't cheap. And I sit and I make pinpoints, dot points, I should say. And then I just review on the fly, hopefully like that format. So a bit of work goes into it. So I appreciate the people that continue to listen. They continue from start to finish because it starts looking pretty good lately. And I just want to say thank you so much to all you guys. Even if you only listen to one episode, if it's just one movie that catches your attention, that still just means the world to me. I appreciate it so much. Making sure you follow me on Instagram and Facebook under Goose Talks Film. And like I said, over on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcasts, I am there and available, waiting for you to listen to my gibberish and nonsense. But anyway, I will leave it there. And as always, make sure you support your local cinemas and go watch those movies. I will catch you later, guys. Goodbye.